Hello and welcome to the 167 podcast. It's so good to have you with us. Today, we're speaking about covenant-keeping marriages, building a marriage that stands the test of time. We'll see you soon. There's a saying in the Bible that everybody in your room in a coffee shop. Hello and welcome everybody to the 167 podcast. We're back. We're in the house. We're ready to go. We're so excited about today. And we just want to welcome everybody that is joining us or listening via audio on one of our podcasting platforms or watching on YouTube. Again, we're rocking in the set here. We've got the artwork behind us. So you really are being treated right now if you're joining us on YouTube. And then the even bigger treat, if you are joining us via video, is you've got Sven shaking his shoulders right now.
Shaking
Just
it.
blessing you.
Shaking it. Yeah. We left the planter boxes off stage because quite frankly they were very heavy.
Not because we struggled carrying them though. We just thought for the sake of let's just try something different.
Let's try something
very
different.
Strong, you know.
Yeah.
We would have done that easily.
One in each hand.
There you go.
But it's good to be here. It's good to be on podcasts again, and I hope that everyone's been enjoying our conversation when it comes to relationships. And this is really the last one on relationships that we're talking about today, trying to round it out on a good, strong finish. What's the point starting if you expect to exit, right?
Yeah.
So, we want to build strong marriages and set people up for healthy, strong marriages that endure, that get to the end well. Yeah. And so, it's been a good conversation the last few weeks.
Yeah, I've loved it, and it's been so good to just chat about relationships, even because I don't even think it's something we've spoken about, or marriage and romantic relationships, something we've spoken about too often. So just chatting and going a bit deep into some of this material has been amazing.
Good.
And if you're new here to the 167 podcast, maybe it's your first time listening or you're seeing the link shared somewhere, just a big welcome to you. We hope that you enjoy the listen, enjoy the conversation and the fun. And what the 167 podcast is all about, it's quite simple. There's 168 hours in a week. Maybe one of those is spent in a church, a house of worship somewhere. You've still got 167 other hours where there can be some growth, where there can be some development.
That's right.
So that's what we like to do here. We like to have conversations where we chat about, most things, but really with the goal of helping us get closer to God and His will and purpose and plan.
That's right.
For our lives. And we have a lot of fun doing it. And the best part about it is doing it with you guys. So for everybody that is joining us, you're welcome. And let us know. Maybe you are.
I like that. You're welcome.
Yeah. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Not that you're welcome. I mean, you are welcome, but you're welcome
you're also welcome for the chat. We just want to encourage, if you are watching on YouTube, you're welcome to leave a comment on the video as well. Or if you want to check out our Instagram, feel free. That feels like it's probably one of the easier ways to get hold of us.
It's probably the best way to get hold of us.
Yeah.
Not that I find many people are actually getting hold of us there, but people are commenting or, seeing what's being posted. We probably don't post quite enough, but
we post. We got some
There's
stuff
threads
coming through the door there.
There's threads.
If you heard that right now, that you can see Sven is like, we're not getting as many. I think even if you can just DM us,
just
on Instagram,
encourage us.
Just say hi, or just say love the episode, or just say you guys are so handsome. Just DM. Just let us know that you're out there. It greatly encourages us because we love speaking, but we can speak off camera as well. We do this for you guys, and we do it to help and to add value. So if you do enjoy it, please drop us a DM there on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. So, Phil, you and I, we were at a training event this week.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
How do you feel?
Man, I feel good. I'm a bit tired because a lot of that, you're focusing. But for me, it was so timely. It was so in season. Some of the discussions that were had, even just on soul management and just where you're at. And
good.
I really felt like after listening to some of those messages that there's a couple of things I actually haven't been doing very well. So I felt like, wow, these 3 days, I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest.
Yeah.
But after these 3 days, I just feel a lot better.
Good.
I feel encouraged. I feel like there's some things that I'm wanting to do and wanting to try. Great. And I've also just learned a lot. Thank you to everybody who was teaching there and the AOG that made it possible, because every single session I just felt I took a lot from. Very
Good.
practical. So man, I feel great. I really enjoyed it. How was your experience?
Yeah, it was good. It was good training. I think we walk away from something like that, and you got to always remember, okay, I can just walk on from here, but I actually need to stop and apply something. So there's one. I think I had lots of great sessions and learned a lot, but there's one session in particular that I'm going to work on, because you just can't do all of them. So you need to take what's the lesson and then run with that. And if you get that right, then you can move on to the next thing. So, but then you're probably in another conference learning something else new. And I think it's just important, like, to be continual learners, and that's why we love this podcast, is because we try fill up so that we have something to give. And even for the people listening, for the audience, it's like, okay, I need to keep coming, learning, keep being hungry, because out of learning we can grow. And just to put one thing into place. And so even as today, as we talk about covenant or having a marriage that actually lasts, what one thing can I learn from this this podcast or from this series that I can apply into my life? Because the goal is not to get smarter, the goal is to get better. And so if we can apply one thing in, we can get better. And
I'm just going to share quickly before we get in. Like, I loved that last session that Pastor Sean brought, speaking about Hophni and Phineas and Samuel. And I was just like so challenged by that. And just even the one line he dropped is, the other Eli's sons were used to being in God's house, but not his presence. And I think, geez, what a great reminder for everybody who's, if you're in church, you might be a believer, you've got a regular rhythm of coming to church, but it's not the building or the church that ensures that you're going to be healthy and you're going to be in a good way. It's the presence always, and seeking the presence. So for me, like, that's what I walk away with. And it's funny because it was one of the last sessions, but I really did pay attention.
It was a memorable session, though. It was a memorable session. And that's just for free for everyone listening. Jeez. That was just an extra nugget. That's good.
That'll bless you right there. But what we're speaking about and what we're
why should people listen to us about a marriage that lasts, Phil?
It's a very good question. I think they should listen to. I think we're trying our very best. I think that you'll obviously add a bit more because you've been in a much longer marriage than I have. But for me, what I think why people should listen is that we've done a bit of research. We're talking about it. We're praying about it. And I think for me, I prioritize the day that I said my vows, the day that I made a commitment. And for me, it's about times are going to come in my life and in my marriage where things are going to be, not as great as they were on the wedding day, where you're going to have to go through things. There's going to be trials. There's going to be challenges. But for me, it doesn't just stop at a feeling. It doesn't just stop at an emotion. It comes back down to I made vows, till death do us part. And for me, it's those vows that I want to look back on, reflect on. It's actually quite similar, if I think about it, to your baptism as well. Different in some ways, but your baptism as a believer is something that you can look back on as a moment where it's like, hey, it's a physical moment where the old died and the new was born. For me, it's that day where you made those vows, you made that commitment. It's like, I'm in this thing. I'm in this thing for the long run. So for me, if that's good enough reason to listen to me, time will tell. I'm 3 years married in July. So
3? Wow, yeah. That feels like it's gone quickly.
It has gone quick. So maybe you have to just keep an eye on me. But we're trying. But for me, I take the vow. I take the vow seriously. Yeah.
Listen, most things crash at about 4, so you're still good.
Okay,
no,
so
joking.
I got a good year left.
No, I rebuke that. No, you know what I think is how you live every day in your marriage is a big determining factor. And yes, like Lara and I, we've been so grateful to be married for a couple of years. But you can never rest and go, oh, we've done the job, because marriage is hard. Life is hard. Anything worthwhile doing is hard, and we need to have something that is stronger than even the promises that we make, because we let ourselves down like regularly. Yeah. But why listen to us? For me, I like everything that you said, and the fact that God wants he wants marriages to last the distance. That's his plan. That's his hope. That's his desire. That's his dream. And I think it's just trying to figure out God's way and when we figure out God's way, then I think we set ourselves up for a good, good solid lifelong marriage.
Yeah, I love what you said then. I think I'm glad that we're bringing God into it just this one time.
In this Christian church, in this Christian fellowship.
If they'd allow us to.
Can I get an amen?
The place is full. You guys just can't see that. God authored marriage, and it's this moment. And I'm actually going to read the scripture. It's Matthew 19:3 verse 6, and the context is just the Pharisees are speaking to Jesus, and they're asking about divorce, and they say, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? Jesus replied that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female. For this reason a man will leave his mother and father and be united to his wife, and they two will become one flesh. So they're no longer two but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate. And that's such a great picture of marriage, and also that God brings us together. And if God is in it from the very beginning, we can trust him to want us, or want the marriage to succeed, want the marriage to stand the test of time. And I love that you said that, in our own strength, we are going to mess up, we are going to get it wrong, but to have the knowledge that we've got a faithful God who wants to see our marriage's success, the covenant that is marriage, the covenant that we enter into, God wants it to succeed. He wants it to see and to stand the test of time. And for me, it's not just about two people making a decision, especially how we do marriage and how we do ceremonies and stuff as well. God is right in the middle of that. God is the point of the triangle between two people that, hey, we're going to constantly work towards, yes, our relationship with each other, but if we can also maintain a very strong connection and relationship with God, an intimate relationship with God, then we know that in the middle of that, we're going to have a great marriage. I feel like that overflows into an amazing marriage. So it's about keeping God right there, right in the middle of it, right at the center of it, and knowing that he is for your marriage. He wants your marriage to win, and he wants it to stand the test of time.
That's good. I love that analogy. That's always one that I've kept in mind with the triangle in our marriage as well. Like, if we both growing towards God, we're growing closer together. But it's when we stop growing in God, we actually start drifting from one another as well.
So true.
So I love the way that you brought that up. And I couldn't help but thinking, how cool would it be for us to do a podcast in a live studio audience?
I think we should definitely do
like
that.
some rafters, and you just got like this incredible studio audience.
Do you think we would need signs that tell people when to laugh and when to like?
No, because people are very intuitive. I back people to know when it's
just know that's funny.
When they'll just know. Like a Sunday night becomes a podcast session.
Let's do it.
Every Sunday night. Anyway, so I think Christ being at the center is what we said. Like, that's going to be the healthiest thing for you. And then we also gave it that advice. And obviously, this is all coming from Craig Rochelle's what he's been teaching his church.
Yeah.
But the fact that we ought to be on mission, right? Be mission driven, actually trying to advance something bigger than ourselves, because that keeps us fighting for something bigger than ourselves. And then I think, was it last week where we spoke about devil kicking, right? Not letting the devil take hold in our relationship. And so those are all key principles that are going to bring health into our marriage, right? If we've got Jesus at the center, we're growing together. If we've got on mission, we've got purpose in our marriage, and not just idle. If we're devil kicking, it means that the temptations and the things that the devil's trying to bring into our marriages and relationships to destroy them, they get kicked out. But the focus for us now is to go, that's going to bring health. What's going to bring longevity is we have to see, how do we view marriage, right? Because marriages are always great. No one gets married with the thought of that they're going to get divorced. No. Like, if you're going into that thinking of the divorce, I'd be like, I don't think I can marry you, quite personally. But I mean, what are the three views that Rochelle talks about?
Yeah, he speaks about, quite simply, that there can be different views and different approaches to marriage, and there can be a casual approach. There can be a contractual approach, and then obviously what we want to focus on, a covenantal approach. That marriage is a covenant. And all three of these will be approaches that people are taking today, and all three of them will have ways about thinking, a mentality, a mindset about them. And what makes a covenant marriage and what God teaches and what we read about in the Bible, what can make challenging about that is that there isn't a a back door. There's no way where and I
Well,
said,
there is.
Sure.
It's death.
Yeah. So, but we don't want to encourage you to take that into your own
Yeah,
hands.
let's not. That's yeah. Let God take that care of that one.
No, you're 100%.
But I think it would be helpful to define, like as you're going defining covenant, it would be helpful to define what all those are.
Yeah. So for covenant and just in my what we know is that it's a marriage, and like we say in the vows, it's till death do us part. It's not like when things get difficult, when times change, when you start to look different, when you start to act different, when you lose your job, when it doesn't feel the way that it felt on our wedding day or after the first 2 years. That's when we can say like, hey, the spark is gone. That's not what a covenant is. A covenant between two people is a decision. It's a promise that persists. It's something that stays in place over time. And I think what makes covenant challenging for people is that very premise, that idea that over time we stay together. And it's not, and I don't think honoring a covenant is allowing, because you can get to a place in your marriage where it's not the same anymore, but you just stay together because out of the...
Yes, and you just become roommates.
You become roommates.
That's not really covenant either, yeah.
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think covenant goes one step further, saying, no, we're not just going to make a decision to not get divorced. No, I think
For the sake of the kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one. It's like, I don't think it's that. I think covenant is also, we're going to make a decision that even during the highs and the lows, we're going to make intentional decisions to continue to love each other, to continue to place each other first, to continue to put God, right at the middle, right at the center of this marriage, so that even when we're 70 or 80, we can look at each other in the eyes and say, hey, we might not have done everything perfect. Is that too old?
No. I'm just like, you're looking very intensely into my eyes there.
Hopefully when we're in our 70s
I'm like, look somewhere else.
I'm a very intense person.
You're painting a picture of you and your wife, and not you and me.
That's 100% right. I'm sure we'll be chatting at 70 as well, but I don't think we'll have this conversation.
I hope so.
So it's that. It's that we're still at the end of it. It's like we still love each other. We might not have got everything right. Everything might not have been perfect, but we've stood the test of time.
Definitely not. Definitely not. And I think this, we're even as like Bible believing, God fearing Christians, we've got to remember that a covenant is not just something that's made between two people, but it's made between a third party, and that third party is God.
Yeah.
I'm making a promise to God to make these promises to you. So when we break covenant, we're not just breaking covenant with someone, we're breaking covenant with God.
100%.
And so there's got to be that like higher level of accountability, that I'm not just making my promises to you as my spouse, but to God and to you.
That's 100%, and that needs to guide us. That'll guide the decision. And then another approach is is that casual approach to marriage. So we were even chatting about it before we.
You're finding it awkward talking to me now about this.
No, I'm good. Is chatting about. We were chatting a little bit about how a lot of people just aren't getting married now.
Yeah.
So I was watching an interview with a celebrity and married. Well, not married actually. He's with a celebrity, but I was so surprised to hear that they weren't married because they've been together for so long. They've got older kids, and it's said no, we've got something that works. And I think it would be fair to say that there isn't a great urgency for people to get married at the moment. If there is something that they feel, hey, we've got a recipe here.
They're living as though they're married.
100%.
They just haven't made any formal legal commitment to marriage.
Yeah. And then on the other end, you've got, then a casual approach to marriage where people maybe are getting married, but it's probably with the mindset of, let's check this out. Like, I like you, or I love you. It could be even I love you.
Yeah.
Like I want to have a future with you. But if things change,
they don't work out. I don't love you anymore.
And if I wake up one day and I don't love you anymore, cool. Then we can part ways. And then the last one there, and you actually explained this one quite well, was the contractual, where a contract is basically it's like a transaction between two people. It's if I'm getting from you what I thought and what we'd planned, and you're getting from me. Then it works. Then we're happy. If the contractual side of things, or what we thought how it would work between us, when that stops working, then maybe we stop the relationship. Yeah. And people are getting married like this.
They are. No, they are. I think it's come out of a divorce rates are higher than they've been before.
Yeah, I was going to ask, why do you think people take an approach like that?
I think it's a lot about what we've been modeled. I think people have, in previous generations, maybe stayed in marriages that were unhappy and were broken. I also think it's just society is in a microwave state, like where we want things immediate. We don't want to go through pain. We don't want to go through suffering. And we've seen the hurts that have come out of, marriages that have been broken. And so why set yourself up for that? When I was in school, when I was in primary school, it was unusual for people to be in a divorced, like their parents to be divorced. Now, from what I understand, it's like at least 50% of kids would be like, yeah, my parents are divorced. And I think, why go through that heartache and that pain? So just let's avoid it. And I think even in a society that's becoming a little bit more godless, like, why make a covenant, right? Let's just work this out between you and me. So I think there's a lot of factors, but at the end of the day, as Christians, we can't walk. Like, I've had conversations with Christians who, like, they felt like they should marry somebody. They married somebody even though the advice given to them was opposite that. And then they're like, no, I feel like God's telling me not to, like, to get divorced to them now. I'm like, God's not schizophrenic. He's not going to change his mind like that.
Yeah.
He's not going to abandon his principles just for this moment. And I think that people feel like, when I've fallen out of love, that's God giving me permission to leave. And it's not. There's even more severe things than that, where people go, my husband is, or my wife is XYZ. I think I should be free to leave the marriage. Well, not according to Scripture, right? If you want to honor God, then you won't. But people go, no, God will forgive me. Yeah, but you're just sinning with your eyes wide open. Like, that. Yeah. And I'm not saying that if that's happened to you in the past, then that's still over your life. Like, no, God forgives, and from this day forward, you can make a different decision. But marriage is serious. If we go into it with this, like, on-off kind of attitude, then we will find ourselves hitting obstacles we can't get around and pulling the plug.
But that's like you've taken, like, I wanted to ask a question, and you've gone straight there with our mindset going into it. And I think when you understand covenant and really what it means and the decision that you're making when you get married, do you think some people will think slightly differently in the process of getting married?
I hope so.
Do you think some people, like how do you think the approach would change if we understand covenant and really what we're talking about now, how it's a promise, there isn't a back door, it isn't when I've run out of feelings I can get out. With understanding what covenant is, how do you think that'll change the way people think about marriage, if they're talking about it, or maybe they're getting ready for it?
Do you know what we probably haven't done well is taught people about marriage?
Yeah. Not
how to succeed in marriage, but what marriage actually is.
I think that's true.
And I think we should probably be teaching young people on the view of getting married. Like, this is actually the decision that you're making before God. Because I think I got married too quick. One of the best decisions I've ever made, getting married, right? So I'm not knocking it, but going into it very green, not knowing a thing. And when you get married too quickly, you don't necessarily know what you're committing to, because you're actually saying, I'm making a lifelong commitment to one person before God. I think you would go in your selection process, you would have a little bit of a higher criteria, or be a little bit more certain about the person you're saying yes to. Because you might say yes, but then they reveal their character 6 months later and you're married. Now what? Yeah. You can't just change your decision. Yeah. And when I read the scripture in Jesus in Matthew teaches that if you get married, you can't get divorced. Like, if you get divorced, you've actually made the other person to be an adulterer. And you yourself can't get remarried unless it's to that person. That's a big... Now, if you want to be a Bible-believing, trusting Jesus, that he's got the best for your life and all of that, that's a very intense scenario. If you've been divorced, it's not a knock on that. Again, from today, you can make a new decision. So we can't fix what's happened in the past. We can only today make better decisions. And sometimes maybe people make a decision, hey, if this doesn't work out, I'll just hop into the next relationship. But you're not doing that with God's blessing.
Yeah, that's very good. I think just marriage preparation for people is important, for young people as well, to chat about really what it is, what you're getting into, what the commitment is. And we were chatting also a bit about this before, and I think what can make covenant challenging is it's the test of time. It's my life.
Yeah.
And what happens in all relationships, romantic and friendship or whatever it is, that relationships change over time as people change, as people mature, as we make different types of decisions. And I think, you get married at 25 and everybody's 25. At 45, it's different people. And what is very easy to do in that moment is that, I know things have changed. You're different. We're different. It feels different. And that can often be the easy way to say, you know what, I don't think it's working anymore. I think that maybe let's cut our losses here. And for me, I like to just try to think about things slightly different. That even me, like right now, I'm not too much older than what I was when I got married. It's only been a few years, but for me, where we've come as a relationship is different already. So I'm not even going to argue that point. I think that relationships do change over time, 100%. But for me, there is a way to look at it and to view it in a way more positive light, where if I look at our relationship and my marriage in particular, and where we were at day one and where we are now, there's been highs and there's been lows without a shadow of a doubt, but we understand each other way better now. We're on the same page a lot more often. We kind of get how both of us like to do things, how we like to operate. We've also learned how to compromise in certain ways, because there's some things that Jean-Marie likes, something that I likes, and there's ways that we've been able to figure that out better and to do better. Like the analogy I like to think about is like with team chemistry. When you've got a team that's played a lot, Barcelona has got players that from 13 years old, they were playing together, and then they're winning Champions Leagues over and over again as a team. They've got chemistry. They've been together for a long time. What also happens in relationships and in marriage is that I think it's the same. Chemistry can build once you've spent a lot of time together, but that doesn't just happen. You can let time and you can let change become a negative thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the other side is that with covenant, if you do marriage in the best that you can, trying to follow Jesus, it actually gets better.
Yeah.
Like your marriage actually gets way better, because your love is deeper, your commitment is deeper, your understanding is deeper. Yes, it's easy to take for granted, but you got to fight that. And it actually becomes a more blessed thing than you could ever have possibly imagined. And so it's an exciting thing as well, because when you enter into covenant, you're actually inviting God into it. When you invite God into it, you invite blessing, unity, provision. All of the things that you need come in when God is in it. And I mean, things do change over time. But I want to just go back to something that I was talking about, where Jesus said, like, you can't just get divorced. There are obviously areas that where covenants can be broken in a way that still honors God. And because some people might go, oh, but my situation, and I get that. Like Jesus says that if there's been marital unfaithfulness, that's a cause to break the covenant. Right. Paul says that this is him and not necessarily the Lord, but Paul says that, hey, if your unbelieving spouse wants to leave the marriage, you can let them go. And then that's fine. Right. Or of course, death. And we might even say as far as like severe abuse. But that's a very gray area. Like, what does severe abuse mean? Like what so that's more of a conversation with people.
That requires leadership.
But but biblically it's not necessarily something, but there is still ways that we would have conversations around that. And I think it's just there's a weight to it, and when you're talking about marriages will change over time, the commitment is that I am changing with you. I'm not becoming different. I'm not, changing apart from you. I'm changing with you. Do
you know what happens sometimes? And I just thought about when you said that, is that there can be a spouse that's very focused on growth and focused on Jesus and focused on developing. And I think this is also maybe a tension or a challenge where there's one unbelieving and one believing spouse.
Massive.
That there's one person and I'm not saying it's getting it right all the time, but there's a focus on Jesus, there's a focus on walking in faith, taking steps forward, developing as a person. I think that really hurts marriage, and it can make covenant really difficult. Is when there's one person who's focused on growth, focused on and then there's one who isn't. It's very difficult to have conversations. It's very difficult to have agreements to land on the same place, because you're thinking in completely different ways. And I think maybe even just as we chat a little bit about like what are good covenant keeping decisions. For me, like that just jumps out that like as a couple, you've got to both be focused on growing.
Yes.
You've got to both be focused on doing things that help the marriage win, doing things that help you grow closer to God. I love how you said that when there's a focus on Jesus, that often overflows positively in the marriage, if not all the time.
Yeah.
It's as a couple, be sure that you both are wanting the marriage to
Yes.
win. Be sure that you both are doing things. And this is like so funny because my wife and I, we even just saw something pop up on an email, and it was like a course for couples in ministry.
Oh, wow.
That life church that Craig Rochelle and them are doing. And we're just gonna do it. It's like
That sounds good.
4 or 5 videos of 40 minutes. We're gonna try and do it on a Friday.
You must
night.
send me the link.
I will definitely do that.
That sounds good.
4 or 5 minutes. We get some takeaways and just do that. And for me, it was so cool because when I saw the link and I sent it to Jean-Marie, she was like, "This looks great." But like, if
that's an investment. You're making an investment there.
100%. But like, you know, it could be so different where it could be, you know, let's rather.
I'm married to someone who doesn't want that.
Yeah.
What a waste of time.
Let's chill. Like, because it's Friday and it's been a long week. But it was so easy in that particular moment for me to be like, there's someone who wants to grow. And I think as a covenant, even if you're early in marriage or even if you've been married for a little while, it's a great thing to start bringing into the marriage.
That's
like,
good.
Let's grow together.
That's good.
Let's make future decisions today as a couple because it just gets you on the same
That's
page.
really good. You know, the equation is 2 halves make a whole. It doesn't work in marriage. No. 2 wholes make a whole. And so we both have to be committed to grow, like you're saying, growing towards that vision, growing towards that commitment, because it becomes a lot harder. But just because it gets harder doesn't mean that you have reason to exit covenant.
Yeah.
Right? Even as a believer, you're fighting for the covenant. And sometimes difficult seasons, they can last. Difficult seasons aren't just like, they're here this week, I had an argument with my husband.
Yeah.
No, sometimes seasons can last 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years. Yeah. But what you're getting at the end of that, if you keep on fighting for the other person and for the vows, the promises you made between yourself and God and them, is you actually get a healthier, more fruitful, more enjoyable marriage at the end of that, because you've gone through so much. Suffering and it produces perseverance, right? And perseverance produces character, and character produces hope, the Bible teaches. And so your marriage actually gets a way better place at the end of that. But so many people will exit that season and step into another season with somebody else and actually create like learning weak behavior.
There's no guarantee there.
There's no
that you leave one thing and then you start a new relationship or a new marriage and okay, now it's going to be good. You know, now all the things are going to work out. Often there's just a new challenge. There's a new trial, but you haven't yet developed the muscle that is someone of endurance, that is someone who can stay. And maybe there's a question that you can help answer, because I think if you're going through a tough season and it can get long, and the months can pass by or even years can pass by, what is the best way to because you know that things aren't the same, you know that things aren't as you'd love them to be, but you're covenant keeping. You've got a promise that you want to persist. How is the best way to keep going? And maybe you can just speak from like a husband's point of view, even just from a spouse point of view, of just honoring the marriage, even though you know that, okay, things aren't hundreds right now. Things aren't perfect. You know, we're not feeling, it's not completely just this most amazing environment, but we're covenant keeping. What would be so if I'm clear, I know my question sounds...
I think if we're in a contractual marriage, right, where it's like, okay, you hold your end, I'll hold my end, and while that's going, it's working. Problem with that is that you're always fighting for you. And when you fight for you, when things go bad and you're not getting what you want, you start fighting for what you want, and you start looking other places for it. Not just talking about extramarital affairs and stuff like that. I'm talking about joy, fun, feeling light, feeling like having a good time. So you spend more time with your mates than you do with your wife, or more time in your work because that's where you're getting fulfilled. And okay, so the problem is, as soon as you're both fighting for yourselves, you pull apart. But being in a covenant marriage where you go, I'm between us and God, you and me, it's like I'm fighting for you, even when I don't have my needs met. Because the truth is that when you fight for the other person, when you meet their needs, it it over time becomes a response that they begin to meet your needs again. And that's where unity comes in.
Very good.
And so whenever I do a wedding and I always teach on one thing. I teach on mutual submission. Fight for somebody else, and they will begin to fight for you. And when you do that, then God starts fighting for you as well. And then, so as long as you just keep focusing on the other person and God, your marriage will over time be in a healthy place.
Yeah. Sorry,
I don't know if that even answers what you were asking.
It does, and it just makes me think of something else, because it's often one of the precursors, or one of the things that happens in your mind if you ever do start looking elsewhere for needs to be met, is that my needs aren't being met. like this isn't working for me. Like, you're not doing what you said you would do. This isn't what a marriage is supposed to be like. But that's not the heart of mutual submission, is it? Mutual submission is this, okay, we're in a season now, I'm going to fight for you, and we're going to fight. And even when it's about like basic arguments, when you're fighting for somebody and not about something, it also makes the arguments go a lot better, because it's just, no, we want to get to the bottom of the issue. I'm not fighting you to win.
Totally. Yeah. And every marriage will do that. Every marriage will begin to fight for themselves, because it's human nature. We're selfish. We want to please self. And it comes out in stupid ways. Like, oh, but why aren't you cleaning? No, but that's your job to do the clean. That's the mindset that sets in. No, your job is to pay for that. My job is to pay for this. You had your time. You had your time with your friends. It's my time now. That attitude begins to sink in and entrench itself, and we all go through it. The point is to go, flip, this is my reaction. I actually need to do something that doesn't serve me but serves you. And then you learn a new behavior. And then tenderness and kindness comes back. As opposed to criticism and condemnation and conflict, anyway.
Isn't that possibly a good thing for people to even, if you're listening to this and you're trying to find that, like, that piece of nugget or that tool that you can use, isn't that a great thing to try to look at? Is just, how can I meet the needs of my spouse this week? And what can I do? Even if they haven't done that, or it hasn't been reciprocated for a while. Because for me, it's a humble position to take.
It is one of a servant.
It's one of a servant, and I mean, that kind of is, we want to try to take marriage and Christianity and put it in two different boxes, but you can't really. No. You're a Christian husband and you're a Christian wife, and the call of a Christian and the purpose of a Christian is also to serve. And to be there. And yes, it's a marriage, and things go both ways 100%. But for me, even just us chatting, I'm like, I could definitely do that better. I could find ways to be there and to fulfill that role and to submit in that way to the needs of my wife more often. And I think then you'll feel some of that more. You'll have a marriage that just has more love. It'll just feel more tender, like you're saying. It'll be there because it's not this cold transactional, like you do, I do, your job, my job. It's, we love each other. We're here for each other.
Because you got that attitude. I know that you've got my back. We'll go through difficulty, we'll go through arguments, but at the end of the day, I know you got my back. And that creates a great atmosphere of trust and safety, But this is why it's important to realize that two halves don't make a whole, is that I can't, for Lara and myself, she can't fulfill all my needs. I can't fulfill all of her needs. There are some needs only God can fill. And so that's where we maybe have to go through a process of, counseling, or go through a process of going to God with our hurts and our baggages, to find healing there, so that we don't need to suck the life out of our spouse, but that they can be a blessing to us when they serve and do things for us. There's just stuff like that. But that's going on maybe a different conversation. But I think it's the attitude of, I'm committed because I've made a promise to God and I made a promise to you. I want to ask you one question. I've been dying to ask you for the last 20 minutes.
Oh, no.
It's not you. But I had this conversation. I'm like, and I'm seeing it in young people. And I know that there's this decision to get married later. You want to do your thing first. You want to make your career first. You want to, and I completely understand it. I'm not even pushing against it. But there almost seems to be this thing of, I'm going to enter into relationships with as little commitment as I possibly can. And I don't even know if I'm getting the word right. I'm vibing. I'm like, I've got a hook out in the water in a lot of places, and I'm gonna almost compare what I've got, and I'm gonna try to see how long I can go like this before actually making a decision. And I don't think that any Christian listening to this would be like, oh, Flip, the first person I'm attracted to, I'm gonna marry, because that's just an unrealistic expectation. You know, you want to. You're gonna be attracted to a few people. What you want to do is test character and go along and all of that stuff. And just because you're going for coffee doesn't mean this is going somewhere. Yeah. Could you imagine though? God told me, and I'm like, sure that's a scary. No, yeah. That is a scary place. But there almost seems to be a other side push of, like, keep relationships as shallow as possible for as long as possible. Am I getting that?
Yeah, it is. It's safe. It's safe to play it like that. And the reason I say it's safe is that as soon as you go all in on somebody, and by all in I don't mean full speed. Like, I don't mean it's I like you, coffee, let's get married. Like, that's
what
not
are our kids gonna look like?
Yeah, it's like no one wants to have those conversations that early in a relationship. But why I say it's safe to do the vibing, to do everything, because you're never fully there. You're never fully vulnerable in a sense where you're committed, you're invested, your heart is there. It's low commitment. So if somebody turns around and says, you know what, I'm actually not interested, you can say, oh, well, okay, I'm chatting to 6 other girls anyway, or there's 6 other guys around anyway. It's safe. It's like you can almost it helps the insecure person. It helps the person who's trying to keep their options open. But in a sense, you're never gonna find yourself really in those types of relationships where you're growing, where you're really getting to know somebody on a personal level, where you can at the end of that relationship say, I could see us getting married. Because you've never gone to a level of, you said shallow, you've never gotten to a level of depth because you've never allowed yourself to be invested, to open up, to give what people need to know and need to understand in a good way, in a positive, healthy dating way, where people can, if you want to, after a year or 2 years or whatever the deal is, have the questions about marriage. It's happening now, and for me, I think it's insecurity. I think is a big part of that. I think people are scared. I think people are. You want to play it safe in a way where you don't get your feelings hurt, but you also want to appear strong.
Yes,
you want to appear in control.
I really wonder what the fruit of that's all going to be. I think it's maybe too soon to tell. And there's some of that I agree with. Like I remember Jenny, one of our senior pastors, always said, you know, don't give your heart fully over until the wedding day. Yeah. Which I agree with. But I almost think if you never risk getting hurt, you never risk succeeding. Almost, you never risk being actually happy.
That would be my thought. And for me, it's also, how do you go from, and it's a challenge, how do you go from constantly be speaking to 5 or 6 different people, shallow, albeit shallow, but entertaining feelings, flirting, like, you know, speaking, maybe even chatting about some more serious things every now and again, and then all of a sudden, I found her, I found him, and be completely faithful.
And carry that into your marriage in a sense.
It's difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, even just transitioning into dating, it's like, but obviously with both people, like, hey, we're dating each other. There aren't other people. I don't know how easy that transition is. I actually think it's quite difficult. And I mean, Scripture speaks to us about an incredibly faithful God. Even when we are faithless, He remains faithful to us, and that should be a foundation. That should be an inspiration for us to go, we can be faithful. We've got a God who has complete faith in us. We can be faithful. We can have strong relationships, but I don't think you set yourself up for a win.
Yeah, that's good.
If you're constantly, you know, and you know when you're doing it, you know when you're chatting and when you're evoking emotion and feelings with people. I don't know how that's blessing your. Yeah. I'm not even going to say your marriage. No, I'm going to say your first serious relationship, or when you get into a serious relationship. I don't know how that blesses. I think it just adds.
Because what we're not talking about what I'm not saying is like seeing the potential in relationships. You're talking about like, I'm actively pursuing a relationship halfway. Yeah. And I'm just, you know what I think is like, we train ourselves in attitudes. Now you do that for years. Like, how do you untrain that? Like, how do you just switch that off?
I think it probably means that first serious relationship you get into probably doesn't work out. If I'm honest, I think that a lot of that stuff, I think you're gonna learn some hard lessons, and I think maybe that one.
I'm thinking, like, imagine you like this person gets all these text messages from other people, and it's like, what's going on?
But like, what would you want to like stay in that though? If you were the other, if you were the on the other end of the relationship, you're in it, you're there, you've invested, and you're seeing like, just what like.
If I was securing God, maybe.
Yeah.
But to be honest, if I was securing God, I'd be like, be the person that's looking. You know, what's
that you're looking for is looking for.
Yeah. So anyway, I suppose that's us, and the encouragement is that build a marriage specifically with a covenant in mind. That it's not just casual. It's not just as long as my needs are being met, but that I'm in it for the long haul between God and you as my spouse, and we will get through what we need to get through together because God is with us, and we keep Him in it. We keep our promises, even if that's not what we're receiving.
And trust.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's good, Phil. I think there's so much value in this conversation. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's been great.
I appreciate it. And good comments on relationships the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've loved it. We hope these have helped you, and maybe there's people in your life that you think could benefit from some of these talks. Forward them along. Grab the YouTube link. You have to hit us up on Instagram now. You have to DM us.
You have to. I just, as you said that, I'm thinking, what happens if like some husband is like sending this thing to the wife now, like, babe, you got to listen to this because you are like,
well, then we're
other way around.
But thank you so much, everybody. God bless you, and we'll see you guys same time, same place, roughly next week. Cheers.
Bye.